Hey, this is Joe with Grow It Build It, and today I'm going to tell you all about winter sowing. If you currently grow trees, flowers, or plants from seed, or perhaps you just bought a pack of seeds and on the label it says something about needing a cold stratification period, you may be wondering what that is or what is the best method to achieve that. Well, today I'm going to tell you all about winter sowing and I'll show you how to do it. Winter sowing is my preferred way to start virtually all of my seeds, as it allows me to be extremely efficient in sowing or planting seeds. And it gives my seedlings the absolute best start to the growing season if you're going to start seeds outside. I've been winter sowing seeds since probably about the winter of 2013, 2014. So I guess you could say I've got some experience doing this. And I'll take you through the two primary ways that I winter sow seeds, showing you each step of the way, the results, and discuss their pros and cons. So in this video, we're going to cover what is winter sowing, how it compares with cold stratifying seeds in the fridge, what are the benefits of actually winter sowing seeds, how to do it using milk jugs and also with black trays with a clear dome, some do's and don'ts, and other cost-saving tips, and then we will review. So without further ado, let's have a closer look. What is winter sowing? Winter sowing is the process by which we sow seeds outdoors in the winter, contained in little miniature greenhouses. This allows us to subject our seeds to a cold treatment naturally via Mother Nature, but it still protects them from birds and rodents eating them. It also allows them to germinate earlier than if they were just on the ground, and it'll harden off the plants sooner. So as far as what kind of seeds need a cold treatment, many plants that evolved in colder climates, including most native plant species in North America, they require a cold moist stratification period to break their dormancy and allow the seed to germinate. So numerous cold hardy perennial flowers and trees have evolved not to germinate until they've gone through a winter in the ground. Now, this can actually make a lot of sense from an evolution standpoint. If a seed were to just germinate as soon as some water hit it, you'd have seeds germinating in the heat of the summer when it rained or something. And a seed germinating in the heat of the summer would be subject to hot and dry weather, as well as significant competition from surrounding vegetation. That hot, dry weather in combination with shading from more established plants could easily kill a young seedling. But if that seed waits until spring to germinate, the soil is generally always damp in the spring, and the temperatures are not that extreme, and furthermore, there isn't much vegetative competition as everything died back in the winter. So that allows a young seedling better chances to reach maturity. Winter sowing versus cold stratification. So if you don't want to winter sow, you can always cold stratify in the fridge to simulate the winter. And if you're trying to start a seed that in the summertime that needs a cold treatment, you pretty much have to do this. I do have a detailed video showing this process. I'll link to it in the top right corner. But all things being equal, I find it much easier just to plant all or nearly all of my seeds in December or January around Christmas time. I can do pretty much all my work at once. Whether or not the seed even needs the cold treatment, you can still plant it then. The winter usually won't hurt it. Tropical species, that's not always the case, but pretty much everything I grow, it's fine. What are the benefits of winter sowing? Well, the first one is efficiency. As I stated, I can plant all my seeds at once. If I stratify them in the fridge, I have to do that in a little baggie, and I have to do it for each species, and then eventually I'm going to have to turn around and plant those seeds in dirt. I'd rather just skip the refrigerator step and just plant in dirt if I can. Bigger plants. So the miniature greenhouses provide a greenhouse effect. Your seeds will germinate earlier and they will grow larger because of the added heat. Hardened off. So if you started like zucchini seeds indoors or tomato seeds indoors, you may have heard of hardening off the plants. Well, if you winter sow them in their little miniature greenhouses, they'll have warm temperatures during the day and cooler temperatures at night. So they're kind of naturally hardened off. You can plant them out a little earlier if you like to, without having the cold shock. All right, so now we're going to get into how to winter sow. And if you guys are liking this video too, please give me a thumbs up. It really does help my channel out and I greatly appreciate it. Okay, so when do you need to winter sow? Well, you need to sow your seeds early enough to provide enough cold evenings to meet their stratification requirements. For the vast majority of plants, this is around 30 days, maybe 60 days. But there are some species that have longer stratification times, so you need to know what species you're dealing with and get them planted in time. For practicality, I generally target getting all of my winter sowing done by New Year's Day. The holidays usually provide me a little bit of time off to do this, and I can get almost all of my work done in one shot. Okay, I'm about to go into how to do this, but before I do, I want to let you know that this entire video exists as an article at our website. So if you want to have a quick reference later when you actually winter sow, just click on the link and you can go get all the information you want, where you want it quickly. I'll just bookmark that below. Okay, how to winter sow using milk jugs. I'm going to talk about the DIY milk jug method first. If you know anything about winter sowing, you're probably familiar with this one. And yeah, let's just take a look. For materials, you're going to need a clean milk jug, scissors or a sharp knife, a screwdriver or drill for putting drainage holes in, moist potting soil, a watering can or pump sprayer, duct tape, a marker, and seeds. And I'm showing milk jugs here as that is one of the most common and readily available items to use. But, you know, take out food containers like the rotisserie chickens. They can work too, as long as the plastic lid is tall enough to accommodate seed germination. Just make sure you poke some holes for ventilation. Step 1, clean the milk jug. I just squirt some soap inside, shake it around with some water in there, and then rinse it until it's clean. Then I'll dry it out. Oh, and you discard the lid. You won't need it, and I'll explain why later. Next, you use a pocket knife, a drill, or a screwdriver to poke some holes in the bottom for drainage. Try to do this in areas where the holes will never get blocked, such as sitting on the pavement. Make sure you do this step before you cut the hinge, which you'll see in the next step. That way it's easier to put the drainage holes in before you've cut the hinge. And also, if you're using a knife, if you just stab it in there and twist it once, you're done. Okay, we're going to cut the hinge now. So cut around the bottom of the jug, but leave it attached near the handle, like this. That way you're kind of making a flip-top lid that will come in handy later in the spring. Then fill your container with moistened potting soil. Fill it up to about 1/2 inch below the edge. The potting soil can be pretty wet too. Then just plant your seeds per the instructions or whatever depth they require. And then we simply secure the lid on our container. Use some duct tape to wrap around the seam like this. It doesn't have to be pretty, but try to press the tape securely. Then pick it up and test it and give it a shake just to make sure it's going to hold. Finally, we're going to label our container. You can use a Sharpie or something like that. I've found that these wax pencils here, they hold up to UV radiation pretty much better than anything else. Like, they don't really seem to fade throughout the whole growing season. I'll put a link to these down below. But that's it for the milk jug. We've now winter sowed a container. It's that simple. All right, now I'm going to show you another method, which is using a black plastic tray with a dome. Like, this is the little miniature greenhouse you can buy at a big box store or Amazon. And you're going to need one of these, and you can pick them up in a lot of places. I'll have a link down there for Amazon, but I'll also put a link to a company called Greenhouse Megastore, which I have no affiliation with them, but if you're really going to get into this and you want to buy a lot of stuff, it's the most economical way to do it. They charge $15 in shipping with any order, so I just stock up every few years. That's usually how long this materials last. Definitely the most economical way if you're going to get heavily into this. But all right, back into it. You need a tray and a dome and some starter pots. I go for larger style 6-packs that are a bit deeper and wider. This allows me to get larger seedlings, and you can really grow some pretty large seedlings in these. If you go with the smaller ones, you're going to have to transplant them up to larger pots anyways quickly, or plant them in the ground quickly. The larger pots allow me a little more flexibility in when I transplant stuff out or when I'm going to pot them up, and it makes it easier to separate seedlings. So once you have a tray and a dome and some starter pots, the first thing we need to do is make sure that we have drain holes in our tray. You need to have a way for water to drain out of the tray, so add 6 or 12 holes, similar to how we did the milk jugs. If the holes aren't present, just poke them in an area where water can escape. And then also we need to do the same thing on our plastic dome. This will allow air movement to help prevent fungus and some ventilation so nothing gets overheated. I place a few holes on the ends, a few on the sides, and then about 6 on top. And just make sure you don't hurt yourself when you're doing it. If you're using little 6-packs like I am, put a strip of masking tape on each of your containers and label it now or later. But doing the tape now is a cleaner operation and we get a better adhesive bond with the tape. Then fill your 6-packs with moist potting soil, leaving a small gap near the top, and plant your seeds per the instructions or recommendations. Finally, you're going to secure the lid with twine. I just lay down 2 long pieces of twine like a cross like this, place the tray and dome on top of it, and then I just tie a simple knot like you use to tie your shoes. I used to use duct tape on the ends, just out of fear that maybe some freak windstorm would blow it away in the middle of the winter, but I've never found that to be the case, so I just use twine now, and it's been working for me. All right, so now we have our jugs done and our trays planted. What do we do now? We place them outside. And here's the beauty of winter sowing. We're just going to put them out on the ground and let them get totally exposed to all the elements, the snow, the rain, everything. The only caveat I would say is that it's good to keep them out of direct sunlight, at least for the main part of winter. I have experienced premature germination before, which I will talk about at the end of the lessons learned, do's and don'ts section. But we can leave our jugs and our trays out buried in snow and they will not be harmed at all. That's what makes winter sowing just so easy. But your seeds are going to start germinating in spring as soon as temperature warms up. Each species will germinate on its own clock. They're not all going to happen on the same day, but once they start going, it's going to happen pretty quickly. Okay, so once they germinate, you can just leave them there and let them grow for a while. I'll usually leave them with the domes on for 2 weeks, a month. Basically, I wait until I have temperatures are above freezing at nighttime consistently. Once that happens, I'll think about taking the lids off permanently, opening up the jugs, so on and so forth. In reality, though, I have to watch the forecast every day, because if you have a very warm day, sunny day, where the temperature is going to be like 65 degrees or so, you really want to remove those lids. I have lost seedlings before because they were in direct sunlight for a couple of hours in somewhat warm temperatures like that. I've killed seedlings, so don't do what I did. Just monitor the temperature, and if it's going to get above 65 or so, or 60 and sunny, take the lids off. You can always put the lids back on if you're afraid they might die at night. That's not a problem. Once your seedlings get large enough where they have 2 or 3 sets of true leaves, it's time to start separating your plants. So for the milk jug, it's actually easier than it sounds to separate the seedlings. The easiest way to do this is to either loosen the soil with a pencil and just kind of grab with I'll say a soft hand. You can kind of separate the plants. One way that works really well, it sounds awful, but it works. Take a knife, like a pocket knife, and just cut the soil into little squares. Then you can reach down there with your hand and grab a handful of plant. And you just pick them up, and you can now put them into their own pots if you want, or plant them directly into the ground. So for the milk jugs, you can usually get a whole lot of plants out of one of these. What I'll normally do is pot up 6 or 12 of the plants into pots, and then I'll take the rest and distribute them in our wildflower area or along the edge of the woods and hope for the best. For separating seedlings on 6-packs, this is a little more tricky usually because there's just less dirt area there. I will be making a video on my methods for doing this. I will put a card in the top right when that's done. You should expect it in spring of 2022. But you can separate the seedlings in 6-packs. You just have to be very careful. Okay, so let's talk about some winter sowing lessons learned, tips, basically what I've learned through, 8, I don't know how many years experience it is, quite a few. You want to keep the soil moist. This should go without saying, but with both milk jugs and the black trays, you need to make sure the soil doesn't dry out. It can happen in dry winters. So periodically I'll pick up the trays or jugs just to see if they feel light. If they do feel light, I add water. If you're talking about the miniature trays with domes, you just have to remove the dome and water, or place it into a larger container and water from the bottom. For the milk jugs, it's really easy. Just water through the top. I use a pump sprayer to do a lot of my watering around seeds and seedlings. I recommend you research that a little bit. It's easiest to not wash out anything doing so. Now, this is not something I have to do very often in the winter, but I may have to add water 2 or 3 times between January and April. In general, the greenhouses help hold the moisture in pretty well. In regards to keeping the containers out of the sun during the cold parts of winter, I used to just leave my containers in the sun all the time, and the heat cycling didn't seem to ever have a premature germination or anything. But around 2017, I think, we had unseasonably warm week in early February, and I had multiple species in a few trays germinate. Now, it probably would have been okay to leave them where they were and not worry about it. Out of caution, I felt it was too early, and I was fearful of losing my newly germinated seedlings and didn't want to lose all that time. So I moved the trays with the germination into the garage when it got really cold for multiple days afterwards, which it did, like 10 Fahrenheit or 0 Fahrenheit at night. To prevent the premature germination, though, now all I do is I keep them out of the sun until March or April. It avoids the situation completely. Once spring does arrive, I just move all my containers to a location that gets morning sun and shade by afternoon. Okay, so what container is better for winter sowing? Jugs or a little miniature dome tray combo? So there's probably going to be some very strong opinions on this, but I've been using both for years and I feel I can cover the pros and cons of each. And I'll tell you right now, there is no single answer for me. For the milk jug, the pros. You have a larger mass of soil which holds more moisture, and that means less watering. It's easy to add water from the top of the jug as there's no lid. That's another nice benefit. And the milk jug handle makes it very easy to move around, and the cost. Milk jugs are pretty much free. The only bad part about the milk jugs is it has a large footprint and takes up more space per species of flower. And you have to prepare the jug, which takes some extra time. And separating seedlings can be a little more difficult. I mean, that's more if you put too many plants in. If we look at the little miniature dome tray combination, okay, so what's the pros of those? Well, the first one is you can fit a large number of species in a small area. I usually have 8 species per tray in the 6-packs. So it's just more efficient surface area-wise from that regard. The convenience, there is absolutely minimal prep for these, just put some holes in, and everything is very well organized. When it comes to the drawbacks of these little tray dome combinations is cost. You have to pay for them. The other cons would be the small soil volume in a cell means there is more prone to drying out, so more watering. And the watering is not as convenient on these as you have to remove the dome. A jug is better for watering, no question. Once all seeds are germinated, you're going to have to water these more than the jugs in general, just because of the soil mass. A milk jug has a large soil mass that holds a lot more water. It's just a lot better to not dry out. So how do I pick what I'm going to do? My decision on whether I use a milk jug or a 6-pack generally has to do with how many of the plants I want to grow. If I only want a few plants, maybe 6 or 12, then I will go with the 6-pack just to save space. But if I want a lot of species, then I will go to a jug because I can usually pull 18, 24 plants out of a jug without trying too hard. And I will say that watering the dome tray combo is annoying in the winter as you are out there untying the twine, setting the lids down, pump spraying them all, which isn't the fastest thing to do. You generally don't have to do that more than a few times before the seeds start germinating, so maybe once a month or once every 2 weeks at most. But the milk jugs are definitely easier to deal with from that regard. So you're going to have to consider these pros and cons yourself for what you want to do for starting the seeds for your garden and just make your decisions accordingly. I'm just trying to transfer my learned experience and observations onto you. Okay, so let's review. Winter sowing is the process where you can sow your seeds in a protected miniature greenhouse outside in the winter. It allows our seeds to naturally meet their cold stratification requirements through the natural temperature cycling from Mother Nature. It's a great way to be efficient in starting virtually all of your seeds as you can pretty much plant them all on the same day. You will result in larger plants earlier via the greenhouse effect, and your plants will be naturally hardened off as soon as they're large enough to plant out. And it does give you something to do that's gardening related around Christmas time. You can use pretty much any kind of container you want as long as it's large enough to accommodate your seedlings after they germinate, although the milk jugs and the tray dome combos are probably the most common. For a few do's and don'ts, do keep your soil moist all winter. A few times each winter watering in spring is probably what you'll have to do. Do keep the jugs in the shade until early spring to prevent premature germination. And do remove the lids when outdoor temperatures are above freezing at night or they're going to be subjected to full sun and 60, 65 Fahrenheit during the day. Well, that's all I've got for this video. It's been a very long one, but I felt it was necessary to try to give you the full experience. I tried to transfer most of my lessons learned over the years to you, and I hope you found it useful. I want to remind you that all this info I've shared exists in an article format at our website, and I'll link to it below. And early next year, I will have a video up detailing some different strategies you can use on separating seedlings. So look for that. I'll add the link below once it is done. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Again, please give me a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it, as it really does help me out and I do appreciate it. And as always, if you have questions, please ask them in the comments. I will try to answer them to the best of my ability. And you guys all have a good day. Thanks for watching.